So thanks everybody for joining us for today's session. We're focused today on an upcoming RFP that will be issued by EdgeMarket around the higher education enterprise software ecosystem. We'll share plenty of details about the thinking behind the RFP and how vendors can participate once that hits the streets. First, I'd just like to welcome everybody and say hi. I'm Adam Scarzafava, AVP for Edge Events and Digital Marketing. I'm joined here today by Walter Lewis, Edge's Procurement Agent, and Dan Miller, our AVP for EdgeMarket and Solution Strategy. I'll let them introduce themselves in a bit more depth as we start to work through the slides. But I will start just with a quick intro to Edge for those who may not be as familiar with us. We're a nonprofit member-based research and education network and a technology consortium. We were formed by as you see here, the New Jersey President's Council for Higher Education. So we are, we're technically owned by those presidents of those institutions, and we really sort of live that ethos of being of, by, and for the higher education community. We've grown to serve a number of other public sector markets as well, but higher ed really is the backbone of what we do, and certainly the focus of the procurement that we'll be talking about here today. Edge as an organization ourselves, as I mentioned, we're by term of art a research and education network. So we do provide those network services that our members plug into to get out to the internet. We also help them solve other challenges like staffing instructional designers and technologists and cybersecurity officers and a variety of other services that we offer to help them navigate sort of the changing waters of how technology affects higher ed today. But we are that small but mighty nonprofit, so we can't be everything to everyone, and that's where the procurement side of things comes in. We'll delve into the upcoming RFP in a bit more detail. And then one of the other really cool things that we get to do is bring people together for community and collaboration. Things like our EdgeCon events that some of the names I see here, some of you have attended. And are really great gatherings that sort of bring together folks who are thinking about these challenges and thinking about how technology can make the lives of everyone in higher ed, from institutional staff, instructors, leaders to the students, better through the use of that technology. So that's really what we're here to get at today. That's at the heart of everything that we do. And with that, I will get out of the way and invite Dan to introduce himself and get into the meat of today's content.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Adam. I'm Dan Miller, AVP for EdgeMarket and Solution Services. I'm going to take a quick run through of the agenda before we get too far. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the EdgeMarket cooperative pricing system. That is the procurement support function that Adam was referring to. We'll focus on this RFP that's upcoming and some key new elements of that, namely business capabilities and business outcomes as critical foundations to the RFP. A good portion of this presentation is going to be providing education and awareness of those two as concepts, some things that in our run-up conversations, we're finding that most people aren't dialed into yet. So we're going to do a little bit of education, which will give you a clue as to where we're headed strategically here at Edge. Walter will cover the RFP timeline, process the platform, and ultimately the results, and we'll leave time at the end and throughout. And Adam will catch your questions or comments as you want to provide them during this, and he'll interrupt as is appropriate. So EdgeMarket. EdgeMarket is our cooperative pricing system. Edge enjoys a very powerful set of procurement authorities conferred by the state of New Jersey. Certainly a lead agency within the state that has the ability to create procurements or conduct procurements and create master agreements for our constituencies in the state, which are certainly higher ed institutions, but also K-12, all forms of local government, and the corresponding attached healthcare organizations. So we view those as our four market sectors that we support: higher ed, K-12, public sector, and healthcare. We have a technology focus. We are a technology consortium, technology and all related services, and we are national. That's the power of having a cooperative pricing system or a co-op. We are presently in 17 states, as that illuminated map would show, and we are continuing to grow and expand. So we expect the map to be largely illuminated in the not too distant future. The big image is our EdgeMarket portal. You can see that at edgemarket.njedge.net and learn all kinds of good things that are going on there. And we know many of you have already participated successfully, and others of you are thinking about it, then we would certainly encourage and invite you to do so. Our portfolio is accelerating just as we're accelerating around the country. Our primary emphasis in the portfolio would be the software systems. We started out back in 2018-19 with a very early ERP, Student Information System class RFP, followed that with a Learning Management System RFP, and slowly grew the portfolio. And we really have, as you see, it's ramped up significantly as we've gotten deeper into IT professional services, a multi-category procurement. We've actually run that twice, and we have a growing number of providers in that category, as well as enrollment management and marketing support and cloud and telephony, voice over IP, network as a service, those sorts of things. So we're really looking at the entire stack that our members have to deal with. We have an incredibly powerful, comprehensive hardware, software, and services catalog through our major award to SHI, which we call TEX. That is a bedrock agreement within our portfolio. And interestingly enough, we have under our portfolio a Smart Athletic Surfaces Award, which is incredibly popular and in all sectors, higher ed, K-12, and in the public sector, for athletic fields with embedded Internet of Things devices to sense where the athletes are, et cetera. So with that, our focus today is really consistent with our underlying mission, and that is to support the higher ed solution ecosystem, all layers within that stack. And we've done a great job, if I might say, in building out access through master agreements under competitive bid procurements for infrastructure solutions and services. That's an ongoing thing that we do. A layer of the consulting and professional services to help organizations establish strategy, make decisions, move along that strategy, and have the kinds of professional resources to help everything from planning to selecting solutions to implementing those solutions and optimizing them over time. So we have some really good bedrock. So now we get to focus on the thing that we've been planning to do for a number of years. And that is the refreshed, totally rethought approach to providing access to academic and administrative systems for our members. And these are very common things, but typically in this world, we see RFPs for ERP or student system or teaching and learning or CRM, and then all kinds of RFPs for the smaller pieces. And we think that that's a bit antiquated. There needs to be a better way to provide access for our members to the great value that's in the marketplace, and for the solution providers in the marketplace to have a far easier time to make their portfolios available to our members. Everybody is seeking to simplify the procurement and the contract management process across the board, and we want to be ahead of that curve and responsive to those desires and needs. So there are two key dimensions of this RFP that help us answer that call, to be able to reframe how we do procurement, to put a different foundation on procurements than historical procurements typically have done. We're going to explore both of these topics. What first of which, business capabilities. It's no longer going to be about lists and lists and lists of detailed requirements. Those are relevant and important back in the day, but it's not where we are thinking, any of us, in these days. And we want to encourage architecture-based approaches to planning for transformation and executing all the pieces therein. You'll learn more about what we have found and have adopted in the higher education reference models, and very specifically the business capability model within, to provide structure for an organized approach to thinking about managing and conversing around business capabilities. The RFP, as you will see, will enable you to map your proposed solutions to the business capabilities that your solutions support. Similarly, and at a more fundamental level, we're going to introduce the notion of business outcomes. Organizations have been investing in solutions for decades, but they often do so in terms of specifications or requirements or feature functions or kind of the stories that they tell to sort of align the potential bidders to what they're seeking to do or wanting to have in a new system. And that's all great, but we're saying we need to click it up a notch and start thinking with clarity about the business outcomes, the business value and results that the organization needs to realize as a result of that very investment. The challenge is, historically, there's never been a way to really get a grip on that. So it's a very difficult process, and we have found a way to create that grip, create a structure similar to the business capabilities you'll see in the RFP. You'll be able to map your proposed solutions to the business outcomes that your clients have been able to enjoy by the proper deployment or effective deployment of your solutions. So let's talk about business capabilities first. And this is where I'm going to just talk about the concept of business capabilities. We'll then attach that concept to the RFP as we get a little bit further in. Business capabilities are the vehicles of value. That is how value is delivered by an organization to the recipients of the value. And in higher ed, that starts with the business model where the student is the customer. I know we sometimes don't like to say that, but that's the case. They have choices, they have their resources, they can choose where they spend their time and their money and their energy. The business model includes a value proposition. Here's what you get if you come to our institution. Here's what you'll receive and the benefits that will accrue to you. And then there's a financial model that supports the business model. The revenues in, the expenses out, and how those are organized to deliver over time effectively and profitably, hopefully, the value proposition to the customer, the student. Underneath that is the operating model. And I need to give credit, by the way, for this diagram and the concept. You'll see more of this in a minute. The higher education models that I'm going to talk to you about were announced in a global announcement back in 2021. Jean-Martin Lowendahl from Gartner did a great job in a segment of that, bringing this concept together. So this is credit to that presentation and Jean-Martin specifically for this segment of that. So the operating model, no surprise, starts with resources. What do we have? We have money. We have, and I'm speaking from a campus perspective, we may have a physical campus, curriculum, intellectual property, faculty, et cetera. And those are the fundamental resources that create the sources of value. Governance is the decision-making model, long-term strategic, short-term day-to-day tactical kinds of decision-making, and that all leads into the value streams, the composition of value to leap over the wall and be established as a part of the value proposition to the student. And what facilitates that leap would be business capabilities. Business capabilities are the linchpin between the operating model and the business model. So let's put a definition on a business capability. And this is a standard textbook definition for those of you in the enterprise architecture field or others. A capability really is the intentional combination of people, process, information, and technology organized in such a way as to produce a result, specifically a business outcome. We organize the applications, the process, the people on the team, et cetera, in order to make something happen. So what are examples of business capabilities in higher ed? Well, two main categories, and I'm sure you're all familiar with these quite intimately. Curriculum management, all of the things that go into planning curriculum, designing it, producing it, all of the steps related to curriculum. Those are all composed of business capabilities that higher ed has to have in order to be higher ed. Marketing management is a more general class of capabilities, but the higher ed needs those capabilities as well. Advertising and campaign management, market research and planning, those are all business capabilities. Each one of those leverages in some combination people, process, information, and mainly for many, technology as well. That's the fundamental concept of a business capability. In the marketplace, though, here's the great truth for everybody on this call. The marketplace solutions, the things that you do, that you put your careers into, the companies that put your investments into, marketplace solutions play a critical role in supporting business capabilities and business outcomes. That's why you exist. It's what you do. It's how you establish your place in the market. So we totally get and see that. And as we convert that into an RFP, here's how this all connects conceptually. You will be able to, through this RFP, map your solutions to the business capabilities that they enable, and also map your solutions to the kinds of business outcomes that you believe your customers have been able to realize, or that you intend as a result of how you've built your solution, and deliver that solution to your client base so that those outcomes can be realized. We're creating the framework through which you can do exactly both of those things. A little bit about the background. How did we even get here? What was our thinking behind this? We've been thinking about it for a while. The ERP RFP that we did, its procurement was aging out. We're already into overtime on that, and statutorily we can have a little bit of overtime, but we knew for sure we did not want a feature function RFP. We did not want list of checklist-oriented requirements or even stories around specific functions, because that is bulky, burdensome, and outdated. And I know, having run a software sales team and having supported many and working with many consultants in the system selection world, there is so much time, money, and energy spent on non-value added work when it's a multi-thousand, multi-hundred feature function shootout. It is no fun whatsoever. And as a co-op, we also have what we call the Rutgers versus Princeton Theological Seminary dilemma. Way opposite ends of the spectrum. How would we ever establish an RFP that has the requirements that would matter to both of those entities? So we needed to do something different. We needed to elevate the construct, the fundamental construct of the procurement, as well as the conversation that would happen between the buying organization, your prospects and customers, and you, so that there is a higher order conversation that could be had. As a co-op, as a consortium, we can help facilitate that conversation by focusing on business capabilities and outcomes, but we needed a way to do that. We needed a framework that could be useful in all dimensions and in all conversations across the board for both business capabilities as well as outcomes. So we needed to find something or build something for both of those, and we've been on the hunt or on the build for a while. And those things needed to offer value, durable value over time, well beyond any RFP, and to all of the parties involved in the conversation. So we landed on the higher education reference models, which I'll talk about in just a second, as well as a construct known as the business outcomes framework. I'll talk about that afterward. The higher education reference models. There's an organization in Australia called CAUDIT. And so Australia and the institutions in New Zealand and surrounding areas have an organization. Here in the States, EDUCAUSE would be as close to that organization as we might have. But CAUDIT's organization is really focused on enterprise architecture, having a rational conversation about technology, business process, business needs, et cetera, at the enterprise level, so technology can be folded in and fit appropriately. But the challenge was about 10, 12 years ago, actually a bit more than that, more like 15 years ago, with the rise of SaaS software solutions and the ease of purchase, it was getting crazy. People were buying stuff and asking IT, can you just integrate it? Can you attach it? Can you do whatever? And somebody finally said, we need to stop the crazy and create a way that we could have an enterprise conversation that's rational and allows us to do what we need to do in a rational, measured, planned out sort of a way. So they began to build what became the higher education reference models, and it was globally announced in the partnership of 4 major global higher ed associations with a technology orientation in 2021. When we saw that, we knew we had the beginnings of our answer. So we're going to focus on the business capability model. I'm going to focus in on that, give you a little walkthrough of why that's important and how that works and where it adds value. The higher education business capability model is a comprehensive framework for planning and managing the adaptive business capabilities needed in a highly dynamic world. You know all about COVID, don't need to say anything more. Things are always changing. And what's nice about this is a consortium of institutions with some really great consultative support began to lay out the operational model of higher education and began to organize and describe the business capabilities and the families of capabilities in such a way that pretty much any higher ed institution could look at that map and say, that's us, that's exactly us. And they broke the map up, or the model up, into two major areas: the core capabilities and what they call value chains of learning and teaching and research. That's what makes higher ed. And then the enabling capabilities, the stuff that we all need to keep the water flowing and the lights on: human resource management, advancement management, financial management, information management, those sorts of things. You can almost take that, with some exceptions but minor, and say, well, that's the same for healthcare, public sector, K-12. But it's certainly true in higher ed. So two distinct groupings. We'll take a look at core capabilities and value chains first, and I'll let you sort of absorb that a bit. But it's a well-organized, kind of a rational approach to things like recruitment or curriculum development or managing students on down into research, all the things that happen into research. And behind each one of those cells is a bit more information about what's meant by study application management or student supervision, etc. What this does, it creates a common language that no matter who we are, vendor, consultant, institution, consortium, we have a common language that we could begin to talk about, rather than everybody's own definition of how things are and how things work and what we call them. That was one of our strategic objectives for this procurement. Enabling capabilities, like I said before, it's the basic blocking and tackling of administration and technology and facilities and legal, et cetera, those sorts of things, for which there are various kinds of solutions that are available to support those functions. And if you take all of that, you put it on kind of a list or a menu. You know, when I went to school, there was no online registration. You went to a gymnasium and walked around, or however you did it, but you had a catalog that looked a lot like this. And so when we popped all this together, we asked ourselves, and then we presented to the Board of Trustees, what if EDGE members could organize, catalog, and manage their business capabilities like they do their curriculum? Wouldn't that be cool? So turned out the higher education reference model folks already had thought about these things. And they said, look, here's the why we did this. It fosters the whole of institution understanding and thinking. In other words, the map of our world. And it's a way for everybody, no matter who they are, at the board, the cabinet, executive level management, department management, staff folks, faculty, and admin, to see the world for what it is in one place, and use this to guide storytelling and planning and operational and strategic planning, and facilitating the exchange of this kind of information across a community, EDGE, for example, and enable institutions to invest in the capabilities that deliver to them the most important business outcomes. And those eye charts on the other side are real life examples from the University of Auckland, one of the founding and core members of that organization. So what I want to do here, again, our friend Jean-Martin Lowendahl at Gartner, I want to leverage his very simple examples of different ways a capability model, now that you have that standard, can be used to facilitate activity and planning and understanding from a global perspective within the enterprise. So we'll just walk through a few specific things. So you take a look at that map. That's kind of a simplified version of what I've just shown you. But we could take a look at something like a heat map and say, well, you know, it's not the technology we're talking about, it's our business capabilities. Some of them are going to be under pressure on any given Sunday, right? There's things that are changing. So we have high degree or major change that's about to happen or in the middle of happening in this area of our operational model, in this capability that we have. Others fairly stable, others brand spanking new stuff. We're just made it to R1 status. We've got a whole set of things that we had to do to get there, for example. And then underneath that, eventually, would be the technology support. Layering for the pace, managing pace of change. What kinds of things are we really needing to lean into? Because we are changing, the world is changing, et cetera. To be able to make strategic choices and priorities. We only have so much money. Where are we going to put our chips to make sure that, you know, we don't have too much risk that's going to hurt us, or we are not missing the boat on opportunity, or we are not doing what we need to do to make sure we're aligned with compliance and all those good things. So that's something as a heat map. IT support levels, a really good, healthy analysis of where are we really in the wheelhouse and doing a great job of support. Where do we need and have a growing edge to make some investments and to be able to increase our ability to support ourselves or reach out to get others to help us provide that overall support model. Again, all based on the same capability model, just a different point of view. And then finally, the key application landscape. Now we start talking about the underlying technology, and we could say, well, certain things are aging out. We need to make some decisions, not our choice, but we have to, or strategically, we want to lean into something different over here. So it's a way to illuminate that, very powerful for the board who needs to make investments, but they want to know why. The executive team who are being told we need investments, but they need to know why, so they can let the board know why, so we can start to move the money where it needs to be. So with so many uses for a capability model as an enterprise planning and management resource, as a connector of members and solution providers, and also the clear potential for consortium-wide resource, Edge has embraced and is endorsing the HERM to its members. We've already published an article in our View from the Edge. We've got presentations. We'll be doing a lot more. This RFP is the first stake in the ground, practical deployment of the HERM in something significant to Edge, to our members. And the reason why we're sharing this with you today like this, also to you. We want you to understand this and see that it is the foundation for the solutions scope of our higher education ecosystem RFP. So it's here. Now, what are we going to do? By foundation and scope, what do I mean? Well, in the dashed dotted green boundary within that, which is all of learning and teaching and research, all of this is going to be in the scope of this RFP. In the enabling capabilities, the things that are kind of core to administration or adjunct to the academic side, that's all going to be in this RFP. There's a little gray box underneath the enabling capabilities. This is RFP number 1. It's going to be the flagship RFP. There will be another RFP that'll deal with the items in blue, the supporting services, we call them. And then we are working on the concept of a ecosystem for cyber security type thing, because that's a big, wide open area. And we've got some things, but we want to take a more structured approach to those things. But right now, it's the wheelhouse of admin and academia that we're going to be supporting. So to line it up a different way, so what's it going to look like or feel like in the RFP? These, what I have listed here, are the capability scope options for you. And each of you have your own suite and scope of your solutions that you've been successful with in the marketplace. We're going to lay out that entire scope in detail. There's stuff behind each of those parent capabilities that you see, so that you would be able to navigate through and see under curriculum delivery, there's an item called Learning and Teaching Resource Management. There's one above it called Learning and Teaching Resource Development, but now this one's management in this example. And there'll be a phrase or two, a sentence or a few sentences describing what this is. We aren't going to have 85 line item, do you do this, do you do this, do you do that? We all know what that game is. We all know what this is. If you have a solution, you've been successful for a reason, which really means your clients in higher ed have been successful. So we're going to ask some basic information of you, kind of in the typical field-oriented inputs. You know, what is your level of support for it? If you don't do it, we're going to want you to answer no, so we have a firm understanding of what you do or don't do. If you do, then is it a full or partial? We'll have definitions for that. In support of the capability, we'd like you to let us know, well, what modules or major solution components provide the support for that capability, so we can kind of map to your solution map. What is your client production status? Are people live? Are they live, and are some referenceable for that? Or not yet. It's an early stage, and we're at that point in the life cycle. And then a brief paragraph or two on a solution summary statement. And then there will be an option for you to have an attachment. Actually, we're going to require this, and that is to have a more detailed articulation of your support for that capability. We'll give you some topics. We'll let you do it in Word or PowerPoint, answer the mail, but then take it where you want to go with that, and then deliver us as a part of your response the PDF of the Word or of the PowerPoint that contains that information. So we're allowing you to put a spotlight on your support for each of the capabilities for whom your solution has been created. So that's the capabilities. Let's talk about business outcomes. And I could pause here if there's any questions. Adam, have we accumulated any before I move on?
Don't have any in right now, but again, folks, if you have anything that comes up, Q&A panel or the chat panel, I'll keep an eye on both.
Perfect. All right, now let's swing over to business outcomes. A little bit background on the business outcomes thing. And I should just share my background a bit. I've been supporting these kinds of procurement since 1996 and have had experience in supporting several hundred ERP class procurements, lots of hundreds of ERP class procurements in higher ed, as well as in state and local government. And I've seen the evolution, and I've seen what works, and I've seen what hasn't. But common to most is a tendency toward the conversation between the buying organization and the solution providers about what, how much, right? So it's at that level. And what we really need to be talking about are the why. What are we trying to achieve as a business outcome, as business value? And that's really the reason why we make these investments. But the reality is they're not so well articulated, but the board is saying, yeah, I know we can't avoid spending this anymore because there's huge risk in an old system, or we're having these challenges in registration just failed, a year ago, and we can't have that happen again. So it's like buying the avoidance of pain as to investing in the creation of a future. So we're trying to allow for a lean into what the future looks like and being in a well-defined mode. So focusing on business outcomes will enable the buying organizations to determine and declare the business value they are seeking to achieve at some levels of specificity, but we need a framework to enable that to happen, and in kind enable solution providers to show how their solutions support the achievement of business value, just like that. For organizations similar to yours, here's what our customers have been able to do with our solution, and it's no surprise because that's why we built it, and why we built it the way we built it, and why we recommend the planning and the configuration and deployment the way we do, or our systems integration partners do. We make it work to achieve outcomes. And here's the thing, you all have delivered outcomes. Here's the other thing, very hard to capture and catalog that. There's testimonials, there's references, there's quotes, there's case studies, but a uniform categorical articulation and collection of that doesn't exist in the marketplace. We want to be on the leading edge of the creation of that because of the durability of value when that happens, and the elevation of conversation and construct. So some examples to sort of put it into reality for you. Historically, you'll recognize that, in some form or another, procurements tend to look for certain things. There's a thing they want. Here's an example. We need APIs to the registration modules of the most common student information systems. Okay, well, that's interesting. We do that. More interesting is, well, why? What are you seeking to do? We're trying to deliver multi-institution degree programs across a spectrum of our organizations to generate N number of dollars in new revenue within 2 years, that sort of thing. That's the why. Now you can have a conversation with that buying organization that's entirely different about the APIs or whatever the thing is, and more about what they're trying to achieve. And I know so many of you came from higher ed, as in key roles in higher ed, to leap over the fence to the solution provider, and then I'm going to be blunt, you get ground down by the beat up of how the RFPs are structured, the scripted demos, and you're running from one to the next, and you just can't have that conversation. We're going to drive that conversation through structure, training, etc. So that's going to happen. This RFP is the first evidence of that. Other examples, we need automated financial reporting to external stakeholders. All right, what's driving that? Well, we're getting killed on external audit requests. So we need to drop that down, and our goal is 50% reduction in those by 18 months. That makes a lot more sense. Same thing with onboarding the onboarding experience of new employees, and very specifically, we want to do a better job of bringing on employees with disabilities. In fact, we want an NPS score to be stratospheric with that. And here's the story, the bottom line. The features are themselves simply components that enable business capabilities at the end of the day. But it's the capabilities of an institution that produce the intended business outcomes. We're simply declaring our understanding of that and then creating the mechanisms and the frameworks and the vehicle through this RFP and what happens after that to allow this to happen, so you can really sing the song of your value to the people that are looking for solutions just like yours. That's the idea. So the business outcomes framework is this construct that allows us to begin to have that conversation in a meaningful, structured way. It starts with, at the highest level, a concept of business value categories. Those, and these are universal really to any organization. Success in executing, developing and executing strategy. Satisfied customers who keep coming back and they grow. Optimal capacity, how you've organized your resources to deliver the greatest amount of results. Revenue growth, really it's profitable revenue growth is the ideal. Managing your costs, cost optimize, and financial stability. You have your financial house and how you fund in order. Underneath all of those are business drivers. These are discrete, named, defined kind of levers, if you will, that organizations can lean into to increase the profile and the value within the category in which it belongs, or stay steady and lean over into other things so they have the ability to lean in and create greater value and support for themselves. Underneath all of that, investment areas, specific areas and kind of topics where you invest in these areas, and you can define the nature of the investment and what you would do. But as you do that, then you're really supporting the business driver that supports the value category. And it's there where outcomes lives. When you start to think about outcomes, having a framework makes it far easier to think about the outcomes that have been achieved in the past, or organizing and prioritizing the outcomes that we're looking at achieving in the future. So there's a lot that goes on when you have a framework. And the final part of that is each of those outcomes can be associated with one or more value vectors, those kind of attributes of value like satisfaction, agility, quality, reputation, etc. Some can be measured, some may be a little bit hard, but you kind of know it when you have it. There's a concept of connecting outcomes to the value vectors that they support. So to bring those three examples that I mentioned a moment ago, increasing the NPS, reducing the audit requests, and maximizing revenue growth, we can map outcomes to the value vectors that they connect to, but also to the investment areas that they fall within. And any given outcome can be mapped to one or more investment areas, which could be one or more business drivers, which could be one or more business value categories. So it's a taxonomy that allows this relationship to be understood. And so similarly, as with the HERM, the power of a framework, there's lots of uses for that. And identical as with the HERM, an enterprise planning and management resource for the individuated institution and also for the providers, as a connector of those members or institutions and solution providers. So again, common language, and the clear potential for consortium as a consortium-wide resource. So EDGE is now exploring further use of the business outcomes framework for its members and providers. But today, now, the business outcomes framework is serving as the foundation for the business outcomes section of the higher ed ecosystem RFP. Now, what will that look like? Similar to what I showed you for the capabilities, the framework has a taxonomy, it has an organization, and we will provide that organization in the RFP so that you can navigate to those areas for which you can surface business outcomes and explain them. So here we go. Optimal capacity. Well, underneath optimal capacity, there's a definition of it. And then there is one of the business drivers highlighted, talent attracted and retained. And very specifically as an investment area, attracting top talent is our objective, our mission for the next 2 years, 3 years, whatever it might be. And so we talk about what attracting top talent means. What we're going to look for you to do is canvas all of those business outcome investment areas and then surface in your history with your customers and what you know, the outcomes that you know your customers have achieved or believe that they could or should be achieving, or that you intend for them to be able to achieve. And by way of responsive elements, we're going to look for kind of the headline of an outcome statement. The outcome status, the nature of the outcome. Is it aspirational? You believe it should be able to happen? Is it anecdotal? We think it has happened. Or is it proven? We know it has happened. We know with whom it's happened. And here's a little bit more information, the demographic of that client who had achieved that outcome. The value vectors, remember agility, reputation, that were kind of impacted in a positive way about the outcome. Optionally, you can provide the institution's name, but you don't have to in the RFP, but we will ask for you to provide, and we'll explain all this in the RFP, an internal reference number that relates that story, that outcome, to information you have that you might not want to make public or make known to us. But if we do due diligence and ask a question about it, you can say, oh yeah, that was so-and-so, in the phone call that we might have as we do some checkups on those things. Optionally, just like with the capabilities, we'll give you the option of having a bit more narrative about that outcome. What was the story behind the story? Why were they seeking to achieve it? And what role did you and your solution or your partners play in helping them leverage the solution investment they made with you to achieve that outcome, and to what benefit? So we're trying to elevate that and create that as a useful resource, not just in the RFP, but beyond the RFP. So that's the image of the RFP. Let's flip it over into what durable resources mean. It is our intent, as we go through these submissions, these bid submissions, we will extract that information and create a protected, meaning they have to be a member, they have to be able to log in securely to a resource that will enable our member institutions to do some research about the business capability coverage that is shown to be true for the solution providers. I'm looking for a XYZ set of things, and maybe they've adopted the HERM and now they have something, they have their own heat map, and they want to see how does that connect to solution provision in our marketplace. We want to have a specific resource to help with that. And similarly, same thing for outcomes. Maybe they're looking for ideas or looking for, kind of what have others like us been able to achieve, and with whom, with which solutions. Maybe they're already involved with you as a solution provider. They're going to be there for a while. It's a great way for them to probe that information and say, what are we missing? What aren't we doing yet? What might inspire new ways to create greater value with that investment? Similarly, on the other side of the coin, and Walter's going to talk about an important concept in just a moment, we are going to provide an option. It's not going to be anything required, be something optional for the bidders who participate in the RFP to curate all this material. We're going to give you a lot of time to do it first up, and you'll hear that from Walter, but we also know that things change. You add new capabilities, you have new features, you learn more stories about outcomes. We want to give you a way to capture that and maintain it currency, because if there's people researching in this resource, you would want them to have the best available information, I'm quite sure. And there's a concept of an annual refresh in this process. I'll let Walter speak about that. If you've maintained currency in that kind of data, you can be really well positioned for a very easy refresh when that time comes around. And there'll be more. And I'll just, before I steal Walter's thunder, see if there's any questions about this or any questions about anything we've covered so far before we go on.
We did have a question come in the chat, Dan, and that's, is there any opportunity to talk to folks at Edge to determine if our company would meet some of the business outcomes this RFP is going to cover?
Great question. So yes, we can make my information available and we can have that conversation.
Awesome. Yep.
And that's an open invite to everybody. We can set 30 minutes on the calendar just to have an initial conversation, then I can direct you accordingly.
And we can do that in follow-up. We have I'll share Dan's contact information along with the recording. And Dan, I guess we have that Calendly link too, to be able to block some time on your calendar. So we'll distribute that and give everybody the chance to jump in.
Perfect. Sounds good. And we have everybody's contact as an email going back out. So lots of ways to cover that. Great question. Yep. Any others?
That's all for now, but keep them coming, guys.
All right. Walter, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Okay, first of all, let me introduce myself. For those who don't know me, I'm Walter Lewis, procurement agent for EdgeMarket. Because this is something that we're doing new, and it's probably something that you have are going to do completely new. We're going to make this procurement have sufficient time so both of us can learn. So we expect to release this procurement on June 18th. We're going to close it on September 24th. We're going to open questions from the day it's open up until August 16th. We use the BidNet Direct platform to manage all our bids. So I know some of you are members of BidNet Direct. If you aren't, then I would suggest if you plan to respond to this procurement that you take the time to register with BidNet Direct, sorry, beforehand. So we're going to be using BidNet Direct to manage the procurement, but we're also going to be using Decision Director for detailed responses. So the responses to the business capabilities and the business outcomes will be done in Decision Director. We do expect a high volume of respondents. We will be having orals and demonstrations once the procurement is closed and we've collected your bids and we've done some evaluations. The next step would be orals and demonstrations for those who we want to advance to the next stage. We anticipate that there are going to be multiple awards based on satisfactory ratings. And as Dan mentioned, our agreements, we're moving from 5 years to 7 years with an annual refresh of those vendors who have gained an award. So we know that vendors add new capabilities to their platforms, to their offerings, and would have new outcomes. So every annual refresh will give you a chance to refresh your capabilities, to add those things that you've added so that our members can see this is exactly your package. This is what your solution covers in the business capabilities and the business outcomes. I think we can open for questions at this time.
Yeah, so please let us know if you have any questions, any feedback on the ideas that Dan and Walter have shared here. As we wait for a couple of those, and actually, if you want to ask them oh, here we're in the Q&A, we have one. If awarded, would the vendor be on your list of recommended vendors for X type of business? So yeah, Dan, maybe we can flip over while we wait for more questions. I don't know if you have the EdgeMarket portal at hand anywhere. We could show the portal and kind of highlight what that has looked like for some other RFPs. We have a dedicated portal for EdgeMarket procurements where members can go to get additional information about the contracts and about the vendors that are represented there. So we'll pull that up and show what that looks like. But certainly, yeah, there's an opportunity to highlight those solutions to members. And here's the portal, and maybe the IT pro services would be
sure.
Rough order of magnitude example.
Zoom in a little bit. Well, we have two kind of segments of items in the catalog. So we have this very typical solution-oriented, both software technology and services type of solutions where, you know, we can pick on a company like SHI. They have this text contract and there's some, you know, great information about it, and links to all sorts of things and so forth. We have IT professional services, so it's an 8-category set of awards and a procurement we've actually just finished up and are in the process of contract negotiation for a second round of that to see who we have. You can see these sorts of companies that are part of it, and we have them by category. And we'll take a look at Moran Technology Consulting, for example. They are an awardee in 5 categories, one of which is, say, master data management. And then you go to that page and it lists all of the awardees in that category and a very clear description. In fact, it's really a lift from the RFP itself that explains what we mean by master data management and data warehouse services. And you have a variety of solution providers that went through the competitive bid, the vetting process, and for whom we have a master agreement for each. And our members who have logins, notice member-only login, can click on this link, be taken to a page where they can download the contract package. The bid packages are all available publicly because that's kind of what you need to do as a co-op. So we will do the same kind of thing for the ecosystem RFPs. We'll have the categories, et cetera, in a navigable, searchable way. Might end up being a little bit more sophisticated than what you see here. So we're going to leverage the time that you will be able to enjoy in preparing for what will happen when things get done.
Quick question about a specific solution category. Would remote proctoring be included in this list? Understood.
Absolutely.
For another category, I think yes, they're somewhere for
Yep.
remote proctoring to fit in. This seems to be product/solution based. Is there any opportunity here for services companies?
Well, I should have left too soon, I guess. So in this RFP, we're going to do, notice in the professional services, there is implementation, system selection, consulting, et cetera, a variety of things here. So we are not looking in this RFP for implementation related services pursuant to the categories, but we just finished up the second round of IT Pro Services, which has much of that, I think, covered. We're going to do another one because remember, around after the first of the year, so around the time these awards are going to start to populate, we're definitely going to have another round here. For that purpose, like I said before, we cover higher ed, K-12, public sector, and attached healthcare nationally. So there's a lot of ground to cover, and so we're going to run another round to make sure we're covering that ground. I'd encourage you to go to the portal for those of you that are on the services side of the house, or primarily so. Look at what we have for service categories, and if you're going, well, that's all great, but you're missing this, then there's all kinds of ways to get a hold of us. Let us know your thoughts. We could have a conversation. A co-op, a really good co-op, is going to not just meet the needs of its members, but it's going to make it easier and far better for you to meet the needs of our members. And so we want to hear from you on that type of a topic.
Definitely. Would we need to, a procedural question here, would we need to register to Decision Director, or is this a part of BidNet direct registration for all communications? Would folks need to register in both, or what does that process look like?
So Decision Director requires no registration. It really is subordinate to any given procurement. If you've never used it before, then there will be very simple instructions for how to get onboarded to Decision Director when the procurement event is released. And then when you're done, there's a quick submit function in Decision Director, and then Walter will have guidance for all the things you need to do in BidNet. So no registration, et cetera, for Decision Director ahead of time. But you can reach out. We'd be happy to walk you through the platform if you are not familiar with it.
Cool. Can we get the slide deck after the call? We're going to be sending the recording. I know there were some transitions and things in there, Dan. Are we going to be able to PDF the slide deck and send it as well?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, great.
They'll be without the transitions, though.
We'll do that too.
Yep.
A couple member-related questions. What's the best way to see existing members, and how many higher ed institutions are signed up with Edge today? You can view those member institutions on njedge.net. We list all of our current members there, both in New Jersey and then of the co-op specifically across the country. I don't have off the top of my head the number of institutions that are live right now. I know the co-op has presence in 17 states, and that it's interesting because the thing to keep in mind here is we're not limited to the current membership. This really, the outcome of this RFP should be a tool that you can take out there to institutions that are interested in procuring your solution and don't want to slow themselves down by doing their own RFP and jumping through all the hurdles they need to do that. That's why a mechanism like this exists, and we would encourage you to take the outcome of this RFP, if you are granted an award, not only to existing members, but to the higher ed community all across the country as they have a need to procure your solutions.
And one thing I want to tack onto that, Adam, what we're doing here is we're creating a pathway to procurement, so we can leap over the public requirement to do a bid. And we're doing this for as many of our members as for whom this works. This is not the same as system selection. System selection is that intimate act that an institution goes through, or any buying organization goes through, to figure out, well, what is it that we need? What are we trying to do? And so that's why we precursed this RFP with a couple of rounds of professional services support. So I highlighted the Moran Technology Group earlier. System selection is still going to be a thing here. We're simply making it easy to get to the procurement. And here's the other thing. In procurement, you kind of handcuffed a little bit about all the different things you can and want to talk about. We're trying to take relief off of that, right? So that you could have great conversations with the institutions and their consulting partners to really elevate and maximize the focus on business value and other things without concern about breaking a procurement rule, because the procurement is already done. You are now free to have really good conversations with the people that are interested in your solutions. Those folks are going to have access to all kinds of consultative support and a pathway to you.
Thanks, Dan. And then two more questions come in, and we probably have time for a couple more if there are any outstanding still. One specific to a solution category is wireless collaboration technology or screen mirroring for classrooms pertinent to the curriculum delivery piece of the RFP. We would have to get into the specifics there, I guess, but I can definitely see that being the case right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you get to see this and say, well, you know what, that's an area that ultimately we are supporting, and that's why we do what we do to support that. And the answer is yes, absolutely. Put a bid in that category or the others that apply.
Great. Oh, I see Walter has put in the chat the list to the current Edge membership, so you can find that there. And then one last question for now, unless anybody sneaks one in under the wire. Is there a fee to any of the K-20 institutions for the use of the service of you providing qualified vendors?
No.
Yep, never a fee for the institutions to use EdgeMarket. We are currently on the contract via Carahsoft, as well as several other vendors. Will Carahsoft be able to respond representing multiple solutions?
Hadn't contemplated that. I don't know the answer to that question. It's a great question, so we'll take that one internal.
I think we have to consider it, but being that it's focused on sort of those business, kind of the categories of it, addressing the areas of higher ed, they would still need to respond on behalf of specific vendors that fulfill the needs of those categories. Yeah. I would guess. So
might well be.
It would seem to be a pretty collaborative process, but certainly something to contemplate.
Great question.
That looks like all we have for now. So thank you so much, everybody, for spending some time with us on this Thursday afternoon. We really appreciate it. If anybody else from your organizations are interested in seeing this session, like I said, we'll be sending the recording out. We're also going to run the session again next Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll be running the same content, same webinar here. So if anybody's interested, if you have any partners that might be interested, please point them our way, and we'll see them on next Thursday. But otherwise, thank you so much for the time. We really appreciate your interest in participating with EdgeMarket.